Hello, everyone, and welcome to Full Time, where we take you around the world of soccer locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally. Full Time is presented by the Game Sports Podcast and powered by 91 Network. You are listening to Season 5, Episode 7 of Full Time. I'm your host, Daniel Scarpino, and with me is our co host, Gitano Gallo. Before we begin today's show, Full Time is sponsored by Little Caesars Pizza. With their two locations in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, you can download and access the Pizza Portal app so you can enjoy a delicious hot and ready pizza from Little Caesars today. A reminder our listeners that recordings of Full Time occur weekly or bi-weekly, and uploads to all of our platforms for public viewing and listening occur weekly or bi-weekly as well. Folks, it is a pleasure to welcome you back here with us on Full Time, where we get to talk about the beautiful game. G, on this wonderful evening, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. Scarps, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well too, and definitely looking forward to today's show. In today's show, we will talk about Europe's Big Five, the MLS, and local soccer. As always, if anyone would like to listen to our previous content, please check us out at Full Time on the Game Sports Podcast and 91 Network. And without further ado, Gaetano, and to everyone who has taken the time to tune in here today, let's kick off. We get today's show started with a brief look at Europe's Big Five. Club football is currently on a momentary pause as international fixtures are taking place. So, from our last show, there really isn't a ton to update standings wise across Europe's Big Five. So, instead, what we thought that we would do is give a top five list and a couple of top five lists for that matter for our most impressive, most surprising, and most disappointing teams across Europe's Big Five to kickstart the season here this season. So, G, I'm going to pass it over to you. What five teams in Europe for you have been most impressive thus far?
Yeah, so in no particular order here. So I've got starting Germany actually with Bayern and RB Leipzig, who are first and second respectively, and both are still undefeated. Still pretty early in the campaign, but two top teams in top form. Then hop into Spain, Atletico and Real Madrid, who are second and Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid are second and third, and again both teams undefeated as well. But specifically with Atletico Madrid, with kind of the rebuild and like overhaul they had this summer, to kind of be out of the gates already at this pace is pretty impressive for them. Hopping to France, PSG, who are second in the league, also undefeated, have looked really good considering they lost Kylian Mbappe, which could, should really derail any, football team losing a player of his quality. And then to the Premier League, I've got Brighton, who are currently in sixth, but have really bounced back. I kind of look, to the Brighton of the old. For the last couple of years, they've been challenging for Europe. They've just looked really, really good. I didn't want to be boring and pick like Arsenal and City because like it's just, obviously they're top teams. And then just a special shout out to Manchester United, who are sitting in 14th and continue to impress me with their mediocrity. It's been incredible to watch.
Jeez. Well, you know what? You hit several good points there, and I was actually going to get to that one later. Spoiler alert. I do have some overlap with you, Gitano, and you made so many good points there, and I have a couple of different teams as well. So I'm going to start in the Premier League, and I'm going to start with saying Liverpool. I think that they've been excellent under Arne Slot. I think, with Klopp's departure, I didn't know how that was going to go to kickstart the season, but Liverpool have looked comfortable. They look good, and they've only conceded 2 goals, and I've been impressed with them big time. And again, they've had a relatively favorable schedule to start the season, so we'll see what happens here moving forward, but sitting pretty at the top. I also have Bayern Munich and RB Leipzig for the reasons that you mentioned, both still undefeated and playing some very good football. Next, I went to Italy Serie A. I've got Napoli. I really like what's going on there with Antonio Conte. It seems as though he's the only manager to ever get Lukaku playing. And anybody who could do that is good in my eyes, but he really does have Napoli playing some good football on a serious note. And I also have PSG because, again, some big departures, a very young team, by the way, but doing very well in League 1. So for you, Gitano, we'll move things on a little bit. Who are the top 5 teams who have surprised you so far?
Yeah, just quick. I don't have United in my surprises or disappointments because their mediocrity isn't a surprise and it doesn't disappoint me. Just a heads up, just,
Sure.
But actually, we go back to Italy. We just talked about Udinese, who are currently 5th. Holding up pretty well. Had some big fixtures already, and are kind of swinging with the big boys right now. Hopefully, it kind of continues. back to Germany for a couple more teams, actually, Frankfurt and Freiburg. Frankfurt had a pretty decent season last year and has seemed to kind of be keeping up that level. But Freiburg have been super impressive thus far, currently in fourth. And yeah, just kind of keeping some of the other top German teams like Bayern Munich, or not Bayern Munich, but Borussia Dortmund, kind of out of European places for now. They've just looked really good. Hopefully, they can keep that up. Back to France, I've got Monaco, who are currently actually first and undefeated in the division. Just PSG have just dominated, Liga for so long. That it's kind of a surprise and a good surprise to see a team like Monaco kind of challenging them, pushing them. Even though we're so early in the season, they've looked like they have kind of the legs to compete for the kind of length of the season. Hopefully they do. And then my last surprising team, they're ninth in the division, but Spurs, they've surprised me kind of both ways, if we're going to be honest. We've seen like the great from them, when they destroyed United, and you see kind of, Ange ball at its best. And then the surprise is when they just completely fall apart and are terrible, could give up a 2-goal lead in their last game to lose 3-2. And it's just, surprising both ways, really, from Spurs.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree with that for sure. And that was against Brighton, was it, the 3-2?
Yeah, the Brighton game, yeah.
You know what? I should have included Brighton in hindsight because they've had a good season, but obviously still a lot left to play, and we could always revisit these. But a good list for sure, G. I went some of the same, some different. I'll start in the Prem. Nottingham Forest, and the only reason why I include them in my surprises is because I was fully convinced that at this point, I know it's still early, that they would be in a full-on relegation scrap, and they're not. They started the season pretty well. And I tip my cap to them. Is that going to continue? I don't know. But through these first 7 or so games, they have impressed me and they've surprised me. In Italy, Serie A, 2 teams, Lazio and Udinese. Again, not 2 teams that I really had on my radar. Not that I thought that they would be poor by any means, but again, didn't think that they would be doing as well as they are. So they've surprised me in a very good way. I've gone to Spain next, and I'm going for Barcelona just because, there's a lot of discontent at that club, a lot of unknowingness in a variety of different ways. But under Hansi Flick, they've had a great start to the season, scoring a lot of goals, might I add. So yeah, they've surprised me. And again, is that going to continue? I don't think so. I think, like you said, that fall off's going to happen at some point. But I'm liking what I see so far. And then finally, in Ligue 1, Monaco, unbelievable for what they've done to start this season. I think they're on 19 points, if I'm not mistaken. But the fact that they're right up there challenging, doing bits to really challenge PSG, I really love to see it. And I think a lot of people love to see it. And finally, how about those top 5 teams, Gitano, who have disappointed you to start the season so far and maybe that you didn't quite expect?
Yeah, so we'll start in Spain. You didn't expect them to keep up their form from last year, but for Girona to be sitting 11th right now, it's a little disappointing. You kind of was expecting them to at least kind of challenge for European places. But again, the season's still early; they can turn it around. But just not a great start for them. Also, keeping it in Spain, Valencia, who are currently 18th in the table, just have been shambolic. And again, a team that we're used to kind of challenging to be in the European places, really kind of fallen off to start this season. In Germany, Wolfsburg, who are currently 12th in the table, again, a team typically in the kind of top 6, top 8, sitting in 12th right now, just haven't been able to get it going this season. Just a really poor start from them. Same could be said for Roma in the Serie A, who are currently sitting 9th. But again, we've kind of talked about Serie A, like the depth of that top 10 is just ridiculous. So for Roma to be sitting 9th isn't the worst thing in the world, but they've already kind of missed some points on big fixtures. And you just kind of are expecting a little better from them. And then last, there's a big caveat here. It's Wolves, who are last in the Premier League. No wins, but in their games, 7 games, they've already played Arsenal, Chelsea, Newcastle, Villa, and Liverpool. So that's probably one of the toughest opening 7, fixtures you're going to, like 5-7 fixtures you're going to get. So it is disappointing to see them kind of in 20th, but I also do think that they'll bounce back and kind of get out of the relegation zone here.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's all well said, my friend. I'm going to start with Wolves just the same, and you already took the words out of my mouth. Though, I said that Liverpool had a very favorable start to their season with their fixture list. Wolves, anything but, so I expect them to kind of climb out of that, but ultimately it has been a disappointing start. And unlike you, I did go Manchester United. Just been a disaster. Hope it continues for sure. But it has been a very disappointing start because if I'm honest. I thought that they were going to do better, and I thought that this was kind of, after winning the FA Cup, I thought things were really going to kick on. They haven't. If anything, they've regressed. And I think that draw, I think they played Villa to a 0-0 just the other day. That very could have saved Ten Hag's job. I don't know for sure, but it's just
I
been.
hope it did.
Yeah, I know you want.
10 more years. 10 more years.
But yeah, just for me, a disastrous start. I also went to Germany, but I went a bit different than you, G. Hoffenheim. They have European football this season. A lot of people, forget about that, and they're in a relegation scrap. Again, I know it's early, but haven't been impressive by any means, and in fact have been quite disappointing. So they've really got to figure things out. I went to Serie A, and I went different as well. Bologna, another team who has European football, but they're playing incredibly safe. They're basically just scraping by in games. Most of their results are draws, and they're not the exciting team that they were last year. So very disappointed with that. And then in Spain, Real Sociedad. I don't know what happened there, but a really, really, really bad start for them. And again, I haven't really looked into what's happened with the squad or whatever, but yeah, it hasn't been good on their end. And I would expect them that they're going to turn things around, but I would think that they need to turn things around because that's another big club similar to Valencia that we are constantly in the conversation of being competitive every year, and right now it's anything but. So as the season goes on, we may in fact revisit this at another international break. But I'm glad that we got to do this one, G, because it was a little bit different than what we have done, right?
Yeah, it was. We were saying off air. It's nice to kind of do a little more of kind of a broad research than we mostly focus, especially the way the Premier League has been the last couple of years, on City and Arsenal. So it's nice to kind of expand our horizons that much more, not just kind of only be focused on the Prem. It was a nice change of pace.
For sure, and we can't be incredibly biased and talk about Arsenal and City, although it'll be two very good teams to talk about, of course. So as Europe's Big Five is in its opening stages, it's the MLS that inches closer to the end. Gee, before we get into the playoff picture, let's get the painful bit out of the way here. TFC end the season with 37 points, and they will not qualify for the playoffs. Their season is done. It's a bitter ending, to put it mildly, than what we thought this season would happen. But I'm just going to pass it over to you for your thoughts on the season as a whole.
Yeah, so last Saturday's match against Inter Miami, it kind of felt like taking an old dog behind the shed and putting it out of its misery. Like, it was just, and I don't want to sound like bad as a TFC fan, but I'm really glad we didn't make the playoffs at this year. I feel like if we had, it might have papered over some cracks. Whereas not making the playoffs kind of exposes it, and we have to fix these problems. Yeah, just for such a bright start, if we scroll back in our text, I told you a couple times that I was convinced we were winning MLS Cup. I was wrong. But to kind of from that optimism of like, oh, like Herdman's got the Italians playing Insigne, it looks like he cares about playing soccer. To how the summer went and how the season ended, just catastrophic, really. And I've said it a couple times. Tear it down, burn it down, right to the foundation. If we're being honest, like, I don't. It's not going to happen because it's not the way professional soccer works. But like, if I was going to restart TFC next season, I'd have maybe 3 or 4 of those guys in the squad. The rest could definitely be even if you get a guy at the same level, like some of these guys just did not care. But yeah, it's just kind of bittersweet that the season's over, because obviously love watching them and love supporting them, but at the same time, after the kind of the bullshit they put us through this season, like, kind of glad it's done, and kind of hopefully on to maybe not bigger but slightly better things next year.
Yeah, you know what, G, all your points there are well taken. I couldn't have said it better myself, but the point that you made about how we started the season, all joking aside, like, yeah, that was looking very good, super promising, and it all kind of started to dip, and then there was like good performances mixed in there, but yeah, it was largely disappointing. But I think the biggest point that I'm going to take from what you said is that has to go from the ground up, and you've got to go again, and if that means disappointing people and leaving people out, or just outright getting rid of people, that's what needs to be done, because big changes do need to happen there, because this season, again, not that we expect it to go incredibly far, but I thought that playoffs could be a possibility, and obviously it was mathematically, but never really would have been in with a shout to be competitive there. So we really need to dig up, go again. And I believe in Herdman. Not sure if I believe in the way that the clubs run, but I'm going to stay hopeful that things will turn around there. And as for the rest of the Eastern Conference, spots 1 through 7 are determined, which will consist of Inter Miami, Columbus, Cincinnati, Orlando City, New York City, Charlotte, and the New York Red Bulls. They will all get into the playoffs. The likes of DC United, Montreal, Philadelphia, and Atlanta will all be battling for the last 2 playoff spots. G, who might get into the playoffs from those 4 teams? Again, only 2 teams are going to get in, but what's your opinion here?
Yeah, so I'm just going to start by saying I hope CF Montreal don't, just because, I just can't stand them as a club. Awful. So I really hope they don't make it. But like looking at it, so DC, Philadelphia, Montreal, and Atlanta. Sorry, I'm trying to get all my notes here. They all play teams that are already qualified for the playoffs in the East. So like, there's no easy games here. There's not like nobody's got San Jose on the last day of the season, right? Like, can not get my shot in. But yeah, I think it's like they've got all 4 teams have super tough games. Unfortunately, just the way it worked out, none of them play each other because that would have just been box office for MLS. But yeah, just looking at the games, I don't really think any of them are going to, get a lot of points out of this. I don't see any of them winning those games. I think, they're going to be lucky and kind of hoping for a draw. So unfortunately, I do think DC and Montreal are gonna squeak through. But I do expect to be like super, super close.
Oh, good shouts indeed. And you know what, Jeep, just before I give my 2, do you think that some of the clubs, some of the teams that these 4 teams will play might rest some players? Do you think that they're going to try and gain some momentum going into that playoff fixture that they're going to have?
I think you kind of want to keep the momentum rolling. If we're talking about maybe 2-3 games out, you want to rest guys. But like even Inter Miami on the weekend against CFC, like rolled Messi out for 30 minutes, rolled Jordi Alba out for a couple minutes. Like you still want to get that rhythm, keep that rhythm going. Sorry. And get those guys some minutes. So I do think that you're going to see like pretty strong teams still fielded by these teams already qualified.
Yeah, that's fair. And your points for DC United and Montreal are well taken. I don't really have the stomach to pick Montreal, so I'm going to say DC United and Philadelphia because I don't want to see Montreal in there either. But if I was being honest, probably DC United and Montreal, but I'm going to go for DC United and Philadelphia to get those last 2 playoff spots, and we'll see how it all unfolds in a short period of time here moving forward. In the Western Conference, the playoff picture is set. It's pretty much done. We're going to have the LA Galaxy, LAFC, Seattle, Real Salt Lake, Houston, Colorado, Minnesota, Vancouver, and Portland. They're all going to qualify. Did the Western Conference this season play out for you the way that you would have expected it to, Gitano?
I would say for the most part, yeah. Like you always expect LA, the 2 LA teams to kind of dominate. Seattle are just a fucking pain in the ass. I'm gonna censor that. Don't worry. Yeah, Seattle's just a pain in the ass. They're just always there. Somehow they've lost like all of their best players, and they're still just always there. And then you kind of look at the teams at the bottom of the table: San Jose, Sporting, Kansas City, FC Dallas, St. Louis. Like didn't really have impressive off seasons. Are kind of in the midst of rebuilding, so like obviously weren't going to make the playoffs. So I would say for the most part, yeah, the West played out pretty much. Obviously, like the middle bits, kind of interchangeable, but for the top and bottom, yeah, pretty much exactly what you would have expected.
Yeah, me as well. And I know I've said it a number of times on our show, with some of my favorite matches this season have come out of the Western Conference, just some absolute battles. And I always enjoyed, being, whether it was at home or out, having a drink or whatever with friends and watching these games and getting those text messages from you early on in the season. Hey, we just might win the MLS Cup. We just. So that will always sit with me, and then hopefully next season is just the same, but hopefully it's a little bit more improved for TFC. But I would agree that the Western Conference did play out the way that it was supposed to. So now the last day of league play for the MLS will be on Saturday, October 19th, and that's going to have major implications, at least in the Eastern Conference. And playoff action is going to start shortly thereafter. As always, you can get all of your MLS updates right here on Full Time as the playoffs approach. And now it is time for a local soccer update. The SFC Cup wrapped up this past Wednesday, so last night at the time here of recording. And that means it is now time for indoor soccer in the city of Sault Ste. Marie. and that's going to start in 2 weeks' time. So, Gitano, we went from a very long outdoor season, and at the snap of our fingers, we are back inside pretty much, ready to go for the indoor soccer season. So, how excited are you personally?
Yeah, I'm super excited. It's all kind of sinking in. Like, sent the e-transfer to the coach last night, so like we're now we're officially in. We're good to go. Got to get the bag out of the closet and make sure I have shin pads and socks and uniforms still. But yeah, it's so exciting. Indoor, I've always liked it. Like, not more than outdoor, but it's so different from outdoor.
Yeah.
I like the challenge of like the small field, like close proximity to everything. Yeah, it's just so exciting, and I just can't wait to be back on the field with the boys.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not just the men in the Sioux that share that sentiment, and me, of course, but it's the women, it's the youth. Everybody is really excited to get back indoor playing at our turf facility, and I expect that it's going to be another great season all around for Sault Ste. Marie soccer. So definitely exciting times ahead, Gitano. And in other local soccer news, the Algoma Thunderbirds wrapped up varsity play at the OUA level this past weekend with their final games of the season against the Waterloo Warriors. The women ended their season at the bottom of the Western Conference, going winless. The men ended their season finishing second last in the Western Conference, managing to get 9 points in the season from 2 wins and 3 draws. Gitano was a disappointing season for the women overall, but the men, they get their largest points total in school history during a regular season, and they nearly qualified for the playoffs. You and I took in a couple of games together. So, if you could speak to both teams' efforts this season, again, with the men, they finished second from bottom. That's never happened ever as well. What could the future hold, do you think, for this program, both on the women's and the men's side?
Yeah, so starting with the women's side, obviously disappointing season. But they really, and I don't mean this in kind of a misogynist way, but like, look to the men's program, look at the progress that they've made over the years from being winless and bottom of the conference and, frankly, just not good, to, having, school best seasons, nearly qualifying for the playoffs, saving it for the last day to lose out. Like, and again, it's baby steps. It's not, provincial titles or anything like that, but, it's the steps that the program needs to take if that's the goal for them. So to kind of look for the women's side to look to the men's team, like, hey, like, it's a long road. It's not an easy road, but like the road is there. This is kind of the path we need to follow. Kind of, it's really cliche thing, but like stick to the process. It kind of sucks that that's kind of the way it has to be right now. That's kind of cliche and this and that. Um, but I think if their coaching staff sticks around, I believe you said that most of that team is returning still. Like there's not a lot of departures, so like they have kind of a core moving forward that's already kind of established. So even if it's hey, maybe we get one win or we get a draw here next season, we don't get blown out by double digits, every other game next season. Like it's those little baby steps that kind of crawl towards progress. That's kind of really where that's at the stage of that program right now, which is unfortunate because kind of we've seen on the men's side kind of the leaps. Well, I don't want to call it leaps, but like big steps for them. Being competitive with a lot of teams this year, beating some top teams this year, nearly qualifying for playoffs, which was super exciting to kind of, I've never experienced. I've never seen that. Like that was for me, Algoma soccer, and I mean no offense because you played for them, my sister played for them. Like Algoma soccer was always kind of a joke because they just
Right.
lost every game. Like it was just, but to see them like competing, like the game against York was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Like challenging a top team in the country and beating them like on our patch was wild. So again, it's kind of building on that. And again, I think there's not too many departures from that team. A couple key ones in midfield, but like for the most part, that team's turning over. Like now it's okay. We've got 9 points. We've got some wins. We've beaten some good teams. Like now let's go and beat these teams again. Let's beat different teams. Let's pick up more points here and there. Tighten things up defensively. Get those couple extra goals that we need. So I'm expecting a really, really exciting season from them next year.
Yeah, I'm with you too, G. And you know what? Yeah, I think the point about returning players and not having too many graduate, I think that's huge because the women didn't have a single graduating player. They will all be back next season. They've all played together now for at least one season, if not two. And that's something that they can build on moving forward. For the men, they have 3 departures, but the rest of the team is back. They challenged for playoffs for the first time ever. There's a lot of positives moving forward for this program. So of course, you and I will continue to support. And it was great to see, by the way, at the games that we attended here at Superior Heights in the Sioux, the support that the teams, both the men and the women, got. So I hope that continues moving forward. But I also have great promise for this program moving forward. I have they're obviously got a soft spot in my heart. I spent 4 years there as a player and then 6 years there as a coach. So yeah, I hope the best for the program moving forward, and well done to both teams for putting on their display this season, and we wish them the best in the seasons upcoming. This is Daniel Scarpino and Gitano Gallo, and you're listening to Full Time on the Game Sports Podcast and 91 Network. A reminder that Full Time is sponsored by Little Caesars Pizza. You can download and access the Pizza Portal app for any of the 2 locations in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Have a delicious hot and ready pizza from Little Caesars today. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Full Time. As we bring today's show to a close, we want to send our greatest debt of thanks to each of you for tuning in to today's show. G, my friend, well done tonight.
Yeah, well done to you as well. Thanksgiving weekend. So thank you again for, as always, for having me on. Thanks for bringing me in. Thankful for Pep. And yeah, thankful that we get to do this, every week or two. And it's always a pleasure.
Always a lot to be thankful for in this show, Gitano, and our friendship is right at the top of my list. So thank you too, sir. A reminder to our listeners that the next episode of Full Time will be recorded the week of October 21st, 2024. In that show, we will take a look at Europe's Big Five, the Carabao Cup, and the MLS. As always, we'll keep everyone in the loop with all of the happenings in the world of football. For weekly content, make sure to hit like, follow, and subscribe to all platforms of both the Game Sports Podcast and 91 Network on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, and Podbean. For Gitano Gallo, my name is Daniel Scarpino, and thank you for tuning in to Full Time. We look forward to seeing you at kickoff next time back here on the Game Sports Podcast and 91 Network. Happy Thanksgiving to all of our fellow Canadians. Best always.